want to talk applications because so we participate in the Ophelia project, and in it, the University of Essex wrote an OpenFlow and did some amazing tear up, bring up, tear down, restoration, you name it. But to me, the thing that stood out to me wasn't the wonders, and it was a great demo, but to me, I think the main point was missed, and what stood out to me was that a group of, university researchers wrote code that ran on a network, and they didn't know anything about amplifiers, dispersion maps, or routers. Right. They basically, in very simple OpenFlow code, wrote an application that sat in that controller. To them, there was just this little box, and I'm writing code for it, and behind that was this whole network being controlled by it. So what do we think about end user applications? Because I think you don't know what's going to happen. I was really excited when I heard Internet 2 made this SDN sandbox. Just let people play with it. You can't predict what's going to come out of it. Thoughts and comments?
So, opening up the network is risky, right?
Yeah.
Now, there are things that we've done this before where we partition off a piece, right?
Okay.
A user comes in and he's authenticated and he's got the rights because he's already paid for it, more or less, to use a certain amount of resources. Okay. And that can be opened up. I mean, that's been shown that we can do this on a pretty wide scale to say, I've got a pool of resources and you're allowed to use X number of them, and it's predefined. Now they can always apply for more or turn it back, but in that sandbox, if you will, or that caged off area, that behind that guard wall, that's fine. It would only be, would we allow them to ever go in and operate the entire network? Obviously not, because so many other customers are at risk. That's why you have a common network. You got to protect it first. And rule number one: don't blow up the network. So, right behind that, you can say, well, this amount of resources that I'm going to allow for bandwidth on demand, or I'm going to allow for customers to come in and play with, that's very doable. I mean, it's partitionable so that you can handle the risk that you're facing with it.
Well, to me, it's not clear to me yet that the problem, from a broader sense, is accepted as a significant enough problem that we're going to see SDN push down to the optical layer. I think it's still yet to be seen whether there's a lot of hype here or whether there's a real, can we really make this cost effective, and will there be the impetus to push it all the way down? But the thing to stay with, I'm not trying to change the subject, to stay with applications, our network management systems today are applications in something of the same sense of what we're talking here, because they're talking to the elements, we're manually using them to do things. But they're also built almost in layers. And I'm wondering, and this is a real question I have, is if we're building in an SDN framework, where you're allowing lots of different applications for doing things, are we going to be rebuilding some of the same applications over and over and over again because they don't use each other? Or because today our network management systems, there's a performance management piece of it. And anything that is involved typically has hooks into that. Alarm systems, triggering trouble tickets, all of those things interoperate. And if we start abstracting this to where all the applications are built over kind of an unintelligent, simple network with a unified control plane, I don't understand that yet.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that, so I can say from our end anyway, as a large operator, and I know smaller carriers perhaps have a different way to look at this, but for a large operator, you have to know where those assets are at and how they're being used at any given time. You're right, we've invested a lot of money in those management systems. But I think the API could be written on top of it. Okay. Or at least it would still it has to almost use that layer of the management system.
Something of the management system.
Like an EMS and or OSS, or it could be Telcordia systems.
So somehow those still have to be there.
They have to be there because that's how we trigger not only this dynamic nature, but also regular orders are coming into that same system. Regular orders are coming in. The network is also changing on a dynamic basis for protection switching, and it's relaying that back up to this management system so that we know what resources are available. Because, again, that abstraction can happen, but if that management system doesn't understand where the resources are at, and this is, over and above, and trust me, we've talked about this before. IP networks don't always know where the traffic is. You don't ask for it. Well, that's true in IP. But as soon as you go to MPLS or any connection-oriented world, you know where those connections are at.
Yes.
You know where the traffic is. You know where the flows are supposed to be, and you know if they're not there. Because you're going to, if they're broken, then you got to trigger trouble tickets and get people out on the, in trucks and try to go fix it. You know that there's an amplifier broke somewhere, middle of Kansas, you got to go fix it. That, I believe, has to stay in place. I mean, I don't think you're going to just completely turn that model upside down and say, well, networks, just use it up.
So have you seen any discussion on how to integrate this SDN framework with OpenFlow with an existing management system of sorts?
It appears to me, you know, again, I won't say we figured this out. I think that's, you know, this is, like I say, we're here to tackle the tough problem. And that is, how do you deal with the real world out there, you know, where it's not all inside of one building. This PCE that sits at the top seems like the right answer because it could be an SDN environment. As long as it then talked back to a regular management system, then you could fit it into existing networks. I mean, that's the other big thing here is that if you say, well, I've got this brand new SDN, it's completely dynamic, everything works the way it's supposed to, here, check it in a lab. Oh, but you don't have a single one in the network. You got to replace your entire transport network to do it. It's not going to happen, or at least this is a, you know, a 10-year cycle as opposed to a 2-year cycle. If you're going to do this in any kind of meaningful way, the market opportunity has to be large for the folks participating in it, and that means you have to reuse a lot of the layers that are already there. Like I say, this CDC structure coming in, that'll be brand new. We're going to want to take advantage of that. We're going to want to use the dynamic nature of it, but controlling it's going to have to happen with the same systems we do today, or at least linked into them, so that you don't lose that management capability. Something as simple as, you know, you said earlier, customers coming in, well, we like to turn the billing meter on when they're using it too. We like to make sure that the health of the network is fine, you know, that you don't have a signal degrade condition or signal fail condition somewhere that isn't advertised up. Perhaps that's a connectivity, I can do that, but there's no resource available because it's, you know, I've got an outage in the network and that was a shared resource used for something else. I mean, because a lot of this, you know, this optimization is again, from the transport layer, since we got to support even those data centers. And I know that the, you know, I've talked to, you know, colleagues over at Google and Facebook and others, Amazon, large data centers that have a few centers and their own network underneath it. When you look at a carrier environment, you have to say, well, I got to support a lot of different services. It's not just the data centers. It's a big piece of it, and it's a growing piece of it, and maybe it'll be the driver. But at the end of the day, there's still a lot of other services that have to be cared for, and we'd like to apply that, use those same solutions to apply to other portions of the network so that you can amortize it across there.